Hello, it's Natasha N.K.O. 1644 and Pinch Punch, first of the month, no returns, 1st of July 2026. Reading again from Brothers and Sisters. Last chapter was number 8, and in chapter 8 there was the bank robbery with the black woman that didn't believe that Esther was the manager and demanded to see the real manager, and where Esther met that hot guy, the delivery guy or something, but she's not interested in him, of course, because he's not rich. And oh yeah, and then Esther, backed up by Mallory, uh, it's I don't know how to express it, but they had a meeting with their manager, the sexist um, jerk, I should put it, I think. And yeah, so that was chapter 8. So chapter 9. By the time Charles was about to be transferred to South Central, he was barely speaking to either Mallory or Esther. The silence was fine with both of them, especially since Michelle Coleman revealed to Esther that nothing had been added to either of their personnel files. Both women turned their attention to the series of activities that were designed to solicit employee participation and goodwill for the bank's new diversity program. Several weeks earlier, all department heads and managers had received packets of information about the new program, which they were instructed to disperse and explain in detail to their employees. Staff meetings were called to discuss the three-pronged plan, which included a series of monthly 2-hour diversity awareness sessions to be led by industrial psychologists on Friday afternoons, the formation of a mentor program in which certain minorities and women were chosen to be paired with a senior executive, whose charge was to show them the corporate ropes and help them learn to climb them. And finally, the managerial exchange plan, in which Charles was the first and probably the most reluctant participant. Most of the white male managers at Angel City voiced their outrage initially only in the men's room, where, lined up in a neat row, they grumbled about reverse discrimination. That attendance in the diversity awareness sessions was mandatory rubbed some the wrong way. Various senior executives were disgruntled that they would be forced to mentor people not of their own choosing. And as for the managerial exchange program, did that mean that someone from South Central was going to take Charles Weber's place? They all demanded to know. Ridiculous. There was no one in that branch who had the experience or the qualifications. In hushed tones, many of these same men, the majority of whom were among the most highly paid workers in the bank, cursed Preston Sinclair. A sellout, they grumbled. Is he going to have the checks printed in Spanish? Is he going to let some homeboy run the damn organisation? In frustration, they closed their office doors, turned on their radios, and forgot their sorrows with King Cleaver. Kirk Madison might have become one of the talk show host's devotees. He certainly found the man informative and enormously funny, although a bit of a hardliner. But Kirk didn't have the inclination to tune in, since Sinclair's new programs benefited him directly. He had been appointed acting regional manager. He intended to do everything in his power to see that the post became permanent. Farewell parties at Angel City were ordinarily quiet affairs, usually lunches that were confined to 1 hour and attended by the outgoing employee and his or her immediate group of co-workers. But because Preston Sinclair saw Charles Weber's transfer to South Central as the launching of the new diversity program, the word was sent down that a little more fanfare was in order. For that reason, spouses were invited as well. The gathering was held, not during lunch, but after work on a Friday evening at Billy's Grill, a local eatery and watering hole that was not far from the bank. In another break with tradition, all the department employees were invited, from the tellers to the executives. It was a cross-section of the bank that didn't usually interact during working hours, let alone socially. Kirk was standing by the bar when his wife came in. She was wearing a paisley print suit that fit too snugly around her wide hips. As he watched her searching the crowd for him, He wondered just how long it had been since he really looked at Sheila. Could that lumpy, waddling woman be his wife? The 2 kids, back to back, had ruined her shape. Before the babies, she'd been a thin person who liked to swim and bike and take walks. Now she was a fat moron with greying hair and tiny lines around her mouth, and not from laughing either. She was barely 35, he thought glumly. What the hell would she look like at 40? Peering around him, he found it hard not to compare her with the sleek professional women flitting near the bar in their fitted business suits and low-heeled pumps. Their original plan was for Sheila to work and pay the bills while he attended medical school, studying to become an orthopedic surgeon. Back then, she was his champion, making him coffee when he had to hit the books until all hours, urging him on when he felt low. The truth was, it had been Sheila's idea for him to study medicine. She was the one who got the applications and actually filled them out. She even applied for financial aid. She did it all on the promise of a glorious future, a Beverly Hills future, an ocean view. When they still had the dream, everything was easy between them. Easy to talk, easy to divide up the workload, easy to make love. And then he flunked out of medical school, right at the end of his 3rd year. When he failed her, the easiness between them disappeared. Several of his former classmates had formed a very successful orthopedic surgery corporation. They and their families were now luxuriously ensconced in what could best be described as Beverly Hills Yupdom, Yupdom. Part of the 30-something crowd that the old guard residents of the flats of Beverly complained about so stridently in the West Side section of the Gazette. Buying up older homes on decent-sized lots and then tearing down the original structures, they had erected garish monstrosities that dwarfed the surrounding residences. Every holiday season, his former classmates threw a party, and he and Sheila went. He dressed carefully for the event. After all, he wasn't a failure. Banking is great, he would tell them, his voice booming jovially through the crowd. He smiled the entire time he was there. When he left, his jaw was actually in pain. Was it his imagination, or did his old friend seem to patronize him? With each year, their recognition of him seemed to grow dimmer and dimmer, as though his name were in their computerized invitation list, but they could no longer recall the reason for his being there, or even who he was. Each year, he swore it would be the last time he attended. The valet parking, the Dom Perignon and caviar, waiters everywhere, vulgar excess, that's all it was. And on top of everything else, he was forced to do protracted penance afterwards, as he saw the silent disappointment in Sheila's eyes. She didn't say it, but he knew what she was thinking. If only he'd finished medical school. The thing that hurt most was that he knew he was smarter than any of those guys. He'd had bad luck during his 3rd year, that's all. If his professors had only been reasonable and let him take some make-up exams, maybe if his name had been Goldberg, they'd have given him a break. He and Sheila had already received the invitation for this year's Big Bash. He had absolutely no intention of going. The next time he saw those phonies would be at his mansion. Kirk took a big swallow of beer and watched Sheila searching for him in a crowded room. He took care to avert his eyes just as she spotted him. By the time his wife reached the bar, Kirk could hear her panting a little, and there were faint beads of perspiration glistening on the sides of her forehead, on the lines of her forehead. "Hi," she said, giving him a quick dry kiss. She glanced around her. "Not a bad place." "There's the way to Kirk. I'd like a white Zinfandel," she said, smiling at him. By the time Sheila had her drink, the gathering had been hushed to silence as Bailey Reynolds strode to the front of the room. Kirk listened as Preston Sinclair's right hand gave an energetic 5-minute pep talk on the diversity program. "We may have come over on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now," Bailey proclaimed in a happy, booming voice. God help us, one of the men standing near Kirk said with a groan. He's quoting Jesse Jackson. When Reynolds called for Charles Reber to come forward, there was a smattering of applause. Kirk gloated inwardly when he distinctly heard someone say, I'm surprised he can walk the way he's been tossing back those stollies or stollies. Stollys. Charles's expression, as he made his way to the front of the crowd, was that of a man on his way to his mother's wake. With his pinky ring and gold bracelet gleaming, he said a few quick words about his wonderful time at the downtown branch, his perfunctory monotone punctuated with just enough slurring to start a ripple of elbow nudges going around the room. As Charles walked back into the crowd, he passed by Kirk and gave him a hard stare with his bloodshot eyes. It's all yours, he said tersely. Why does he look so angry? Sheila asked when Charles walked away. Kirk didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned around and watched his former boss maneuver his way through the crowd. He was walking straight toward the bar. God, what a lush! Kirk wasn't the only one looking. Mallory and Esther were standing at the bar, sipping what appeared to be white wine, when they noticed Charles approaching them. Kirk watched as Esther, her eyes like two brass knuckles, put a drink on the bar and turned to face Charles. As she stepped forward, her hands were coiled into tight fists, and her face was like a killer's. Charles took one look at her, appeared to hesitate for just a fraction of a second, then abruptly pivoted and headed for the door. What the hell was that all about? Kirk turned back to his wife, who was tugging at his sleeve. You didn't answer my question, Kirk, she said. He's angry because it's my turn now. He's on the way down, and I'm on the way up. Sheila's eyes seemed to brighten. Kirk, you have to become the permanent regional branch manager, she said softly, smiling sweetly. She held out her empty glass. I'd like another one, please. Kirk heard the urgency in Sheila's voice and felt annoyed. He didn't need his wife to tell him that to make it big at Angel City, he had to turn his temporary appointment into a permanent one. Nobody had to tell him that. Nothing had prepared Kirk for the volume of work that he inherited. For the first few weeks, he plodded through 15-hour days. The real estate department was in the worst shape. Kirk discovered multi-million-dollar properties that were thousands of dollars in arrears, for which foreclosure action hadn't been started. In cases where such proceedings had been initiated, only a preliminary letter had been mailed months earlier with absolutely no follow-up since. Because of the drop in interest rates, the bank had been swamped with literally hundreds of applications for refinancing home mortgages. Beleaguered lenders were juggling a workload of nearly 300 loan applications, trying to play a never-ending game of catch-up. To his horror, Kirk soon discovered that some of the applications were months old. Worse, there seemed to be no system in place to process them. In the days that followed Charles's departure, the niggling details of bank management that his predecessor had failed to attend to took up all Kirk's time. He erected a huge flowchart right above his computer, depicting all the work that needed to be done. Slowly and methodically, he set up a series of systems for dealing with the various forms of overload that were plaguing Angel City. Kirk came early and left late. By the time he got home, Sheila was usually asleep, and he barely had the energy to get into bed beside her. At the end of each day, he crossed off his accomplishments with a bright red pencil. Gradually, the flowchart turned more and more scarlet. This position is mine, he told himself. It belongs to me. What he needed was a way to get the attention of the very top, a chance to impress upon Preston Sinclair and his executive psychics in a way that was irrefutable, that he was one of them, that he belonged. The idea of how he could make the top brass notice him came to Kirk after he'd been in his new assignment for several weeks. I hate to stick you with this, Kirk said to Mallory when she came to his office one afternoon in early December. What am I getting stuck with? Mallory asked. She looked slightly curious and a little amused. The diversity program will be launched in a couple of weeks. I need for you to oversee the effort for the various departments. I want you... Oh yeah, I can't pause it. There's something wrong with my recorder at the moment. I can't press pause. So this should be fun. The diversity program, worst case scenario, I'll just upload as the chapter is 2 videos. Because I'm opinionated. The diversity program will be launched in a couple of weeks. I need for you to oversee the efforts for the various departments. I want you to appoint a chairperson for each department and make sure they all set up their groups, have their meetings, and do the requisite follow-up work. No problem, Mallory said evenly. Her expression didn't reveal whether she was putting Kirk on or was truly happy about the assignment. She had a kind of Mona Lisa smile, he thought, really quite intriguing. I'm so glad you're in this position, Kirk. Everyone can see the difference you're making already. Morale is much higher. Thank you. I want the program to be a success. I think it's absolutely necessary that everyone feel he or she has an equal shot at the top. He said this as though he were reciting for a final grade. 2 weeks later, the first diversity awareness workshops were held. Mallory and Kirk made the rounds, sitting in on each of the departmental sessions. In one of them, I'll repeat, 2 weeks later, the first diversity awareness workshops were held. Mallory and Kirk made the rounds, sitting in on each of the departmental sessions. In one of them, a black woman showed slides of individuals from different races. After each slide, she asked the group what they thought about the person pictured, whether or not he or she was good, bad, intelligent, could sing or dance. They were supposed to say the first thing that came into their minds. There was one picture of 2 men, black and white. They both wore jeans, had beards, and stared straight ahead with hard little eyes. Kirk's initial thought was that the black man looked like a robber and the white guy looked like a college kid, maybe a surfer. He tried to talk himself out of both assumptions and asked himself why a hairy black man was more frightening than a white one. Which one of these men will hurt you? The facilitator asked. No one in the room raised a hand. Mallory leaned over, giving off faint wafts of some sweet scent that tickled Kirk's nose. He could smell her pepperminty breath when she whispered, Maybe we ought to get to the next session. Well, I know where she's going, but frankly, I think it's a little condescending, Mallory said once they were in the hall. I mean, maybe if we were in Mississippi or somewhere like that, she'd need to teach us not to judge people based on skin colour. But that's really not an issue for the folks gathered in this room. I think people just need to get to know each other better, become friends. That's it, he said quickly. When I was on a football team in high school, half the team was black. We all got along. Mallory nodded. What high school was that? Sergeant, in the Valley. Mallory clapped her hand over her mouth. We used to play, you guys. I went to Belcher. I was a cheerleader. He could picture her as a slim, leggy cheerleader. No kidding. When did you graduate? 74. I came out in 72. Wait for the aeroplane. It might be a good time to say something about unconscious bias. Yeah, it's what they're talking about. Wait. Become friends. I came out in 72. I'll bet we were at some of the same games. Amazing. Anyway, I understand that this diversity thing is an issue that Preston Sinclair is absolutely passionate about. It was while they were walking to the next group that Mallory's words sunk in. The diversity program, as mindless as Kirk thought it was important to Preston Sinclair. Why, he wasn't quite sure, but for now it didn't matter. If he wanted to impress the president at this point in time, the quickest way to do it was through diversity. Kirk didn't go home after the last session as he had planned. Instead, he returned to his office. Sheila's puffy face stared at him from an 8x10 frame everywhere he went in his office. Her eyes seemed to follow him like a constant reproach. Kirk leaned way back in his chair, remembering what a former colleague had once told him. Help a powerful man get what he wants, and you make a powerful friend. He closed his eyes and tried to think of what could be motivating Preston Sinclair. Was he an honest guy with integrity who truly believed in racial harmony and fair play? He dismissed that thought immediately. That type dies in the Peace Corps, he told himself. What did the man want, he asked himself, closing his eyes even tighter. He thought about some of the changes that had occurred since Sinclair's presidency began. Several older board members had been replaced by women. He recalled the pictures in the LA Business Journal of 3 smiling women and a beaming Sinclair. When Angel City Bank gave a $25,000 check to the United Negro College Fund, Preston's picture appeared in the business section of the Gazette. He was photographed again when the diversity program was announced. His every accomplishment was accompanied by his picture in some newspaper or magazine. He was even in our town, pictured dining out at one of the trendy restaurants that Monthly never stopped writing about. The man is a media freak, Kirk thought. Preston Sinclair was a man after a good photo opportunity. Well, Kirk was going to give him one. Nearly a week later, Kirk sat at a table in one of the city's downtown restaurants. Seated across from him was Bailey Reynolds. He searched Reynolds' face, studying his eyes for some indication, any hint that would reveal just how much he could trust the man. Angel City was as cutthroat as any other corporation, and despite the older man's genial manner, Kirk knew that he hadn't gotten as far as he had just by being nice. But if he couldn't rely upon him, who would be his conduit to the 34th floor so that he could get the attention he needed? While Kirk was fitfully pondering his options, Reynolds reached into the basket that the waiter had placed on the table and plucked out a roll. "Kirk," he said, as he buttered his bread, "you're doing an admirable job." He broke off a small piece of flaky pastry and popped it into his mouth with fingers that seemed naturally curved. He continued to smile even while he was chewing. "Everyone knows that you inherited a less than perfect situation, and we're aware of the yeoman effort you've made to turn things around. You're a man who gets things done, and I don't mind telling you that you're being watched. Just keep up the good work." Now it was Kirk's turn to grin. So they were watching him. Wasn't that another way of saying they were grooming him? The hard work you've seen is simply my way of letting everyone know that I'd like my present appointment to be a permanent one. "I'm capable of a great deal more, sir," Kirk said. The older man fastened his hard black eyes and his steady beam of a smile on Kirk. "Call me Bailey. In fact, I invited you to lunch to share with you an idea I've been thinking about." Reynolds' smile stretched out to jaw-breaking proportions. He was a pragmatic man. One of his great strengths was that he knew his limitations better than anyone. His job, when he did well, was to carry a hatchet at all times and make sure that the victims didn't see the blow coming and no blood was ever seen by unsuspecting bystanders. He wasn't creative. He wasn't an idea man, but he appreciated talent in others and had come to depend upon using what bits and pieces of genius strayed his way to ensure his own survival. Leaning across the table, his bread poised in midair, he said, "I'm listening. I don't have to tell you that ever since the riots, a lot of attention is being paid to the way minorities don't get mortgage loans. Now, you and I both know that Angel City standards apply to everyone equally. The reason blacks and Latinos are turned down is because they don't qualify. I thought that in the current climate, it would be a positive step for Angel City if it inaugurated a minority mortgage loan program, which creates special qualifications for potential homebuyers who are black and Latino. The program could help satisfy the Community Reinvestment Act folks, and the bank would get favourable press. We might get the endorsement of some powerful person from the minority community." "Does anyone come to mind?" Bailey said. "There's that minister who's always in the paper, Reverend Rice." Preston Sinclair would like the idea. "That sounds promising. Why don't you talk with Reverend Rice? See if he'd be willing to give you his support." 2 days later, in the early evening, Kirk stood outside the Solid Rock Baptist Church, a massive brick edifice that took up an entire city block. He felt a thin prickle of terror skitter down his neck like a frightened spider. Spilling out of one of the church's basement doors was a long line of ragged men and a few women. They all bore the air of disheartened refugees. For as long as he could remember, he'd had nightmares about neighbourhoods like this one. The stories and the fear were well founded, he thought. The fires of April 29 had been proof enough of that. Kirk just didn't understand that kind of rage. Okay, it was wrong for the cops to beat Rodney King. Although, come on, the guy had to have been doing something. Cops didn't go around beating people for no reason. But for the blacks to go on a rampage, burning and looting, that was just crazy, plain stupid. And then the way they beat that Denny guy, dragged him out of his truck and beat him, 4 against 1. Could have been anybody. He looked around him, nervously eyeing every dark face he saw, looking at their hands just in case they were packing a brick, or worse. Reverend Rice isn't here just yet. He's talking with the homeless in the church basement. I'm Mrs. Rice. The woman who stood before Kirk in a cramped reception room didn't look like a minister's wife. She was about 30-something and had a sultry, exotic kind of beauty that was decidedly more worldly than spiritual. The dark skirt she wore ended just above her pretty knees. She extended her hand and Kirk saw the vivid red of her fingernails. Was the Reverend expecting you? Yes, I have an appointment. I'm Kirk Madison from Angel City National Bank, he said, shaking her hand. He tried not to sound impatient. People who were late annoyed him. Well, he'll be here soon, the woman said placidly. Why don't you have a seat over there? She nodded towards several plain wooden chairs lined up around the wall. Kirk took a seat and instantly regretted that he hadn't brought a paper with him at least. To make matters worse, he was starving. He hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch, and the whole building seemed to be filled with the delicious aroma of fried chicken. Is that food I smell? He asked the woman, somewhat tentatively. They're feeding the homeless in a basement. She glanced at him, her eyes filled with concern. Are you hungry? Oh, no. I can have a plate sent up here. No, really, I'm fine, really. Nearly 20 minutes later, Reverend Odell Rice barreled into the room. By his side was a boy who looked to be about 8 years old. As soon as Rice entered the space, it seemed full, almost crowded. He was a big man with expansive gestures. He kissed his wife on the cheek. How's it going, Juanita? The woman murmured something, and the two of them laughed. Reverend Rice then turned to Kirk. Mr. Madison, I'm Odell Rice. The minister had one of those deep, old man river kind of voices, and standing before him, he appeared to be no more than 45, a lot younger than he looked in the newspaper pictures and even on television. As senior minister of one of the largest black congregations in the city and executive director of the Los Angeles branch of the oldest civil rights organization in the country, Reverend Odell Rice was in the news a lot. Reverend Rice led Kirk into his room, a room only slightly larger than the reception area. The boy, whom Kirk assumed to be his son, silently followed the minister and sat in a chair in the back. The walls were literally covered with plaques, awards, and citations of every description. Kirk counted at least 4 certificates of appreciation from the mayor and 3 resolutions from the Speaker of the Assembly. In addition, there were pictures of the minister with numerous city and state officials, even a photo of him with the president-elect. Well, Mr. Madison, I want to hear more about your idea. I was intrigued by what you told me on the telephone, he said, taking a seat behind the desk. Kirk leaned forward in the hard wooden chair. It's really quite simple, Reverend Rice. Along with everyone else, the people at Angel City National Bank were quite devastated by the events of April 29th. As responsible corporate citizens, we're committed to providing ways in which minorities can participate in the American dream. As his voice droned on, Kirk stole a quick glance at the clock. My God, he thought, it was almost 7. He definitely didn't want to be in South Central after dark. He heard a cracking sound from out on the street and jumped a little in his seat. His words floundered, momentarily suspended in the air. Just a car backfiring, Reverend Rice said blandly. Gunshots are louder, a little sharper. He smiled broadly, revealing a huge gap between his front teeth. Well, Kirk took a breath and mentally condensed his 15-minute spiel into 3 minutes. At Angel City Bank, we believe that the best way to achieve the American dream is through home ownership. Therefore, we are offering a special program that will enable potential first-time minority home buyers to purchase houses with little, or in some cases, no money down. And how can I help you? Reverend Rice asked. Kirk leaned slightly forward in his chair. Well, we were hoping that once you learned a bit about the program, you might be moved to endorse it. And of course, with your status in the community, we hope that you might be able to help identify and steer some potential buyers to us. He smiled. A sudden hardness filled the minister's eyes. Look in your computer files. You must have lists of all the qualified black folks you've turned down for loans, he said coldly. Excuse me? Kirk felt his face grow red. The Reverend stood up. He really was quite a big man. Look, Mr. Madison, I appreciate Angel City's sudden largesse. Truly I do. Aeroplane. I've lost my page, hang on. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, she extended her. I want to hear. Sorry, hang on. If I pause it, it's going to be really hard for me to find the place I left off at. We've met the Reverend, and the Reverend told him to go F himself and go and look at all the other people that were turned down for loans instead of trying to get me to bring you fresh meat. Oh, here we go. The Reverend stood up. He really was quite a big man. Look, Mr. Madison, I appreciate Angel City's sudden largesse. Truly I do. But you and I both know that the reason fewer black people own homes in LA is because banks make it impossible for them to qualify. And let's not talk about business loans. Angel City is one of the worst offenders in the city. You all don't even loan Asians any money. He laughed, a loud crackling sound like bullets popping. He leaned toward Kirk. Are you in lending? I was. How many black clients did you approve? I don't quite. Nobody comes to mind. Mr. Madison, if we're going to play ball, let's determine the rules of the game, shall we? Now, Angel City obviously wants to change its image. Fine. You guys want a public relations queue, but you need my help to get it. Well, my help doesn't come cheap. Mr. Madison, I have terms. Kirk was startled. He hadn't expected the minister to make demands. Such as, he managed to ask. Solid Rock needs a 3%. That's right. 3% loan for the apartment buildings just west of here. We plan to turn them into low-income housing. We'll need a renovation loan at the same rate. He paused long enough. He paused long enough to search Kirk's shocked face. Hardball, Mr. Madison. Only game I play. Kirk swallowed several times, trying to recover. Of course he'd want something. The man wasn't a fool. What's the asking price for the property, Reverend Rice? 930,000. Another 500 for renovations. Will it appraise out? The minister raised his eyebrows. Well, let me see what I can do. There's something else, Mr. Madison, Reverend Rice said. Home mortgages are fine, a good step. But if you want people to have a stake, they need to be in charge of their own neighbourhoods. His deep voice suddenly rose, and he stretched his arms open wide. Kirk was afraid to look at him, and aeroplane. It's my book, my week. There we go. Home mortgages are fine, a good step. But if you want people to have a stake, they need to be in charge of their own neighbourhoods. His deep voice suddenly rose, and he stretched his arms open wide. Kirk was afraid to look at him, and at the same time he was afraid to turn away. They need to own the businesses in their own communities, not be sold to by a bunch of outsiders and foreigners who don't respect them. Let's make Angel City's commitment a two-pronged affair that includes low-interest business loans. And I'm talking about qualifying people without the usual bullshit. I'm sure you know what I mean. He lowered his voice and his arms and smiled. Now, when the building is completed and say... Just check it's still recording. Yeah, please. Wait. Bit of a stay. That's 35 minutes, okay. And I'm talking about qualifying people without the usual bullshit. I'm sure you know what I mean. He lowered his voice and his arms and smiled. Now, when the building is completed and say the first new businesses in the black community has been successfully opened, that will be a real ribbon cutting ceremony, Mr. Madison. The mayor, whoever he is, will be there. Lots of dignitaries and of course bank officials. You, your boss. Very important that your boss be there, eh, Mr. Madison? Reverend Rice paused, then added, "Of course we'll have to call a press conference. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Mr. Madison?" Conniving bastard, Kirk thought, looking into the minister's composed face. He managed a stiff smile. Actually, things had gone rather well. It was always good press to loan money to a church, and in times like these, to lend money to a black church was the best kind of human interest story. And the part about business loans, why that wasn't a bad idea. Reverend Rice's project might work in their favour. A press conference. Great! That would certainly appeal to Preston Sinclair, and Sinclair should be grateful. He smiled to himself, then stood up and extended his hand. "Yes, I would, Reverend Rice." When Kirk stepped outside the church, he was almost swallowed up by the line of people wending their way into the church basement. There must have been nearly 300 of them. The men were frightening, dark and lean and desperate. A few were Latino, but most were black. Hopelessness seemed to be coming out of their pores, along with the horrible stench of bodies that smelled as though they hadn't been washed in months. Who were all these people, he wondered? Where on earth did they come from? And then he saw, through the open basement door, tables stacked with clothing, others with toiletries and blankets, and other tables with hot food. He remembered what the minister's wife had told him. It was a feeding program for the homeless. It's that time. If I wasn't reading. It was a feeding program for the homeless. Inside, black men and women called out directions and kept the lines flowing. Kirk felt fingers tapping on his back. He whirled around and faced a toothless old black man. "Say, mister, you in line?" Kirk fled to his car, jumped in and took a deep breath. Everything in the surrounding night seemed to be leering at him. He sped down a dark street toward the freeway. After driving 2 blocks, he came to a dark corner and hesitated. Right? Left? Each way seemed wrong. In the gloom, he didn't recognize any landmarks. He was about to turn right when in his rearview mirror he saw a car coming up swiftly behind him. Before he could veer away, the dark sedan had crashed into the back of his new Lexus. Kirk jumped out and raced to the rear, crouching down to see the damage. Lucky. The fender appeared to be barely dented. He was about to turn around and walk to the driver's side of the other car. He had a few choice words to say, but he felt the gun in his back. There were 2 men, close enough so that he could smell the beer they'd been drinking. Or maybe it was malt liquor. He'd read somewhere that black people drank an inordinate amount of malt liquor. Anyway, there were 2 men, close enough so that he could still smell the beer they'd been drinking. Or maybe it was malt liquor. He'd read somewhere that black people drank an inordinate amount of malt liquor. "Give it up, motherfucker!" The words were like a hard uppercut. The air seeped out of him. He didn't move. Oh, come on. Now, you know what? I'll go through. Just for my fans. Just for you, my fans. Don't make me sing. But don't make me sing. No, don't make me sing. I'm so shy. Don't make me sing. Give it up, motherfucker. The words were like a hard uppercut. The air seeped out of him. He didn't move. Your fucking money. Give me that watch, a voice shouted. Kirk pulled his wallet out of his pocket, then took off his watch and placed him in the outstretched palm in front of him. Just let me go home, he thought. Don't hurt me. Where are your car keys? What? Kirk whispered weakly. Something wrong with your ears, motherfucker. They're in the ignition, he said slowly. Kirk scratched the back of his neck self-consciously, then watched as a short, stocky figure got in his car and sped away. The car behind him took off in the same direction. He heard both drivers laughing as they drove away, shouting into the street, "You been jacked, motherfucker, you been jacked!" I've always wanted to say that. I've never had the opportunity. Reverend Rice was standing on the stage in the basement in front of the crowd of homeless people when he saw Kirk come in. His son was next to him, mimicking the older man's wide-legged stance. From where the minister stood, he took in Kirk's pale face and a terror in his eyes, and he knew there had been trouble. At the moment, though, the problems of the people gathered in the room were foremost in his mind. The smell was overwhelming. He knew that many of the men and women in front of him hadn't bathed in days. He held up a roll of paper towels in one hand and a bottle of glass cleaner in the other. Brothers and sisters, I told you some time ago that I didn't believe in giveaways, that I believed in people standing on their own 2 feet. Solid Rock's ministry isn't about giving you a fish dinner. It's about teaching you how to fish. We're going to begin phase 2 of the program here. It is about self-help. Tonight we will be giving out paper towels and glass cleaner, jumbo garbage bags, as well as shopping carts. These items have been donated by Louis Markets. You have a choice. You can take the glass cleaner and paper towels and clean car windows. You can use the shopping carts to collect bottles and cans, which can be redeemed for cash at the church every evening at 6 o'clock. Or you can use the paper bags to clean up strip mall parking lots. At the back of the church, we also have t-shirts for you with the church logo, which will identify you as part of this program. In the near future, we will be giving out graffiti removal solution, and that will be another source of revenue for you. Starting tomorrow, dinner will cost 25 cents. You will pay for it with the money that you earn. We will give you free work supplies for 3 months, and then we'll begin to charge a small fee for these items. As I've said in the past, America isn't the land of giveaways. Some of you blame the white man, your ex-wife, or your old supervisor for your current condition. Let me tell you something. The Lord ain't interested. No matter what adversities I've experienced, my God tells me to get my behind up and get on with it. If your God tells you to wallow in your own misery, to blame the white man, blame your ex-wife, blame your old supervisor, you're worshipping the wrong God. Now, some of you are struggling with the demons of alcohol and drugs. We have programs for those of you who truly want to be free. Some of you can't read. That's nothing to be ashamed of. The shame is in not improving yourself when you have the opportunity. We have a literacy program that will teach you. Just see Mr. Sims at the back of the church and he can sign you up. Brothers and sisters, your fate is in your hands. Take responsibility for your own lives. Let us pray. After the prayer, Kirk made his way to the front of the church. He was about to pass out from fear and a terrible odour that was pressing in on him. Reverend Rice walked over to him, followed by the boy. "What's wrong, Mr. Madison?" he asked. "I was robbed," Kirk said weakly. "They took my car." His body weaved a little as he spoke. Reverend Rice grabbed Kirk's arm. "Watch yourself now. Let's go over to my office. We'll call the police. Would you like some water? Something to eat?" Kirk shook his head. The minister held him by his elbow, steering him past the crowd and out the door. "Well, Mr. Madison," Reverend Rice said as they walked up the steps to his office, "do you think Angel City might want to add a special low-interest car loan to the program?" The end of chapter 9. I had to hold my tongue. That was high reads. Thanks for listening.